Stop walking through the world looking for confirmation that you don't belong, because you will always find it. The first time you pull away and find power in standing on your own, I think your heart is marked by the wild. I think you belong into the wilderness in a different way, because every time after that, when you choose fitting in, it's painful. But don't ever believe for a second that you are not going to have to stand on your own. Like everything I've ever done that's ever really made a contribution, I have felt alone in doing it, but alive. There was a quote from Maya Angelou that's really been it really just irritated me. I love everything about Maya Angelou. She's been a hugely important person in my life. But she's got a quote that says, "You're only truly free until you belong everywhere, nowhere," which is everywhere. "The price is high and the reward is great." And I thought, what the hell does that mean? You belong everywhere and nowhere. Like, here's the one thing I can tell you for sure that I've known from my research. In the absence of love and belonging, there is always suffering. And I feel like I've really experienced some suffering around belonging in my life. And I thought, what does that mean? You're only free until you belong nowhere and everywhere. And so I just started digging into it, and I kept asking this question, like, men and women who have this really strong sense of true belonging, what do they have in common? And is there any validity to this idea of belonging everywhere and nowhere? I think for me, what was really surprising was after I spent a year trying to understand where we are as a country, and really globally this is happening across the world. And what I learned was pretty shocking to me, that at the very same time that we've sorted ourselves into these ideological bunkers, that we really actually demographically, we don't go to school and worship and live by people who are different than us as much as we used to. Mm-hmm. And the more sorted we become, you would think the more connected we become, because now I'm just with people who are like me. But it turns out that behind those ideological bunkers, it's not that we're deeply connected to each other. We just hate the same people. And hating the same people doesn't really mean jack when it comes down to belonging, because just because you hate the same people doesn't mean that you're going to show up for me when I'm throwing up at chemo, or you're going to go pick up my kids from school when I'm running late or have a flat tire. It's like, it's not real connection. It's not super meaningful, deep connection. So we're more sorted, but we're lonely. Loneliness is serious stuff. Like John Capaccio, who's a researcher in Chicago, has got this amazing book. I mean, just his research on loneliness is incredible. But he talks about how primal loneliness is for a social species. That when we're hungry, our body says you're in danger if you don't eat. Thirst is you're in actual physical danger if you don't hydrate. Mm-hmm. Pain says there's tissue damage somewhere you've got to heal. And loneliness says you need social connection or you're in trouble. And when I first read that, I was like, okay, that was like very moving and well done. But then when you look at the research, loneliness is a greater predictor of an early death than smoking a pack of cigarettes a day or obesity. Like, loneliness kills people. It is a huge predictor of mental health, physical health, and early death problems. Because here's the thing, we are lonelier and we are more disconnected than we've ever been, and it's polarized, but art can save us. Art has the power to render sorrow beautiful and make loneliness a shared experience and transform despair into hope. Music, like all art, gives pain and our most wrenching emotions voice, language, and form, so it can be recognized and shared. The magic of all art is the ability to both capture our pain and deliver us from it at the same time. The thing that I learned about belonging that I think is so powerful and that I cling to as a creative is that belonging is not something we negotiate with the external world. It's something we carry in our hearts. And as it turns out, that the men and women who have the highest levels of true belonging not only find sacred being a part of something bigger, but they have the courage to stand alone. And the reason why art and creativity are going to be so important to our healing and to whatever comes next in our world is every creative knows what it's like to stand alone. And so creatives have this incredible ability when they find the confidence to be able to find beauty and value in being part of a creative community, but also the courage to stand alone. And so what I would say to you is understand, and I wouldn't say this as a therapist, I would just say it as a fellow creative that's found my own pain and success, is be a part of a creative group and community. But don't ever believe for a second that you are not going to have to stand on your own. You will have to be alone at some point. It is what we're called to do. And that's what Maya Angelou meant, I think, when she said, you belong everywhere, nowhere, which is everywhere. Because if you carry belonging in your heart, it's not negotiated externally with other people. And I think the thing that's really powerful is, as a social species, the reason why we feel lonely is because we are neurobiologically wired to be with each other. And as a social species, we need art, and we need music, and we need photography, and we need to see the artifacts that allow us to find our humanity in each other. That's art.
Yeah.
That's music. Oliver Sacks says, music pierces the heart directly. It needs no mediation. Like, that is one of our ways out here. I owe probably my career and my creativity to not belonging. And so because I didn't belong growing up ever, we moved all the time. And we moved it really hard, 4th grade, 6th grade, 8th grade. Always the new girl and always different. It forced me to become a pattern finder. So I became someone who could seek and understand patterns in people's behaviors, in people's emotions, and I could predict what they were going to do better than they knew what they were going to do. And so I think my creativity, like a lot of people's creativity, was born of being on the outside.
Yeah.
Like if you go to my house, you'll see I collect outsider art. Because I never even thought about that till just right this minute, but I like the view from out there.
Yeah.
I think for me, like with the TED Talk, I've just never done anything that's turned out to be valuable that wasn't just scared shitless to do it. Like everything I've ever done that's ever really made a contribution, I have felt alone in doing it and afraid, but alive.
Yeah.
Well, I think what I have found is that after the first time, and it only really takes one time, after the first time that you opt to brave the wilderness, you pull away from what a group of people thinks. Maybe it's your creative community, it's your critics. The first time you pull away and find power in standing on your own, I think your heart is marked by the wild. I think you belong into the wilderness in a different way. Because every time after that, when you choose fitting in over belonging to yourself, it's painful. And so to me, the whole idea is not just navigating the wilderness, which I think every poet and theologian and writer over time has used the wilderness as this kind of a lone journey thing. It's not just about navigating the wilderness. It's about becoming the wilderness. It's about becoming, I am going to be on my own a lot, and it's going to be okay because there is beauty and strength in that. And it's not that I won't ever find great joy in being a part of something, but I will always belong to and believe in myself first. And it's not easy. And one of the things I love is that no one can straddle the tension of paradox better than a creative, because that is the creative energy. Carl Jung says that it's our greatest spiritual gift. The paradox is the only thing that becomes remotely close to describing the human experience. And that's art.
Yeah.
That's the tension of be fierce and kind, tough and tender. It's that tension. And so when I think about the practices, think about art. Think about all great art. Who shows us a glimpse of what we think we hate and can make it beautiful better than an artist? It's the belief that we're inextricably tied to each other, that you and I are connected in a fundamental way that can never be disconnected. And while that is not breakable, it is forgettable. You cannot break human connection, but you can forget about it. And to share moments, to hold hands with strangers, they're just moments that remind us not only what's possible between humans and even strangers, but I think more profoundly what's true about what's between us. That's the truth of how we're built to be together. And I think this is such a great important message for all of us, and especially for creatives. Stop walking through the world looking for confirmation that you don't belong, because you will always find it. Stop walking through the world looking for evidence that you're not enough, because you will always find it. Your self-worth and your belonging is not something that we negotiate externally. It's something we carry in our wild hearts. And if we spend our lives looking everywhere we go for evidence that I don't really belong in this meeting, I'm not really an artist, I just do this on the side and this is my side hustle, but it's not really my job, or we keep comparing ourselves, you will find exactly what you're looking for.